The NFL. I've been watching the NFL for a long time now. About, give or take, 14 years or so. I started watching the NFL, and specifically the Denver Broncos, around 2012, right around the time when Peyton Manning joined the team. And no, not because I'm a bandwagon. You shush. No. It's because I'm from Denver. And with them being so good, by happenstance, I decided I wanted to support the team. And it was my first real time watching and analyzing a sport so critically. You know, there were times when I would legitimately be very sad that they would lose. And luckily during that time they were good, so they didn't really lose too often. And by the time I was, more grown, by the time I was more cognitive enough to know that the games weren't that serious and not to take it so serious, I was right around the time they won the Super Bowl. So, happy me. But I think when people try to describe why they love a sport and why they love their team specifically, they have a little bit of trouble. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today. Why do I love the NFL? Why do I love the Denver Broncos? And why do I believe it is the most entertaining sport to watch? Let's find out. Come on. The first reason is the NFL lives in the world of Extremistan. The world of Extremistan, as described by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his book The Black Swan, is described as a world/province where the total can be conceivably impacted by a single observation. Now, the opposite of that, in turn, is the world of Mediocristan, the province where few extreme successes or failures occur. And this is sort of the world where the bell curve is used more than anywhere else. And this book goes into a lot of concepts and talks about a lot of different, ideas that are pretty hard to understand and grasp. If I'm being honest, this book is a bit what I would call mind-blowing. And so if you want to read it yourself, I would definitely recommend it. Great book. And when I was reading this book, it sort of made me realize that this is one of the reasons why I love the NFL so much. Now, Black Swan is what is also described in the book as something that is highly improbable. And the book, to put it briefly, goes into why we should not overlook these black swans, these highly improbable things, and why we should make sure we prepare for them and make sure that we are always looking out for them as a society and as just a person in general living in the world. And what does this have to do with football? Well, the NFL, more than any other sport, at least in my observation and my opinion, has more black swans than in any other sport. I mean, if you look up just top NFL plays, you could watch a 10-hour long video and that will still not be every single play, every single thing you can witness in an NFL game. Things just are way more exciting because of that. You can have a play where a player runs 99 yards down the field, whether that's the wide receiver, the quarterback, the running back. It can be a multitude of different players and plays. And there's still a lot of plays that we have not even witnessed yet in the NFL because of that. Now, if you compare this to other sports, and I'm just going to be talking about the sort of big four, you could say. I'm not going to be going into every sport. And if you think there's a sport that this is also the case for, then let me know. Write it down in the comments. But primarily, I'm going to be talking about and comparing the NFL to baseball, the MLB, basketball, hockey, and soccer. Those being sort of the big sports in the United States. And if we look at other sports such as baseball, basketball, soccer, when you look up the top plays in those sports, you are going to see eventually the same things occurring. How many times have we seen a three? How many times have we seen a home run? How many times can we see a goal in which it's different from what we've already seen? So that's sort of what I'm talking about here. Now, another sort of factor in this, and another reason why the world lives in the world of Extremeson, is that one outlying factor in the NFL can impact a team more than it would in any other sport. For example, injuries. Injuries in the NFL, and specifically to players deemed important / quarterbacks, factor into their season, their games, more than anything else. And I'm going to go into this a bit more in my second reason why the NFL to me is one of the most exciting sports to watch. But just keep that in mind for later. Anything, any sort of injury, any sort of play, they just impact the game more than in any other sport. And to finish off this point, I just want to say that the NFL just is prone, in my opinion, to more of those moments more than anything else. The NFL, compared to the other sports in which the games are there's way more games, there's way more chances for things to happen, which you think would be a good thing with the amount of time and games played in the NBA, in soccer, in baseball, hockey. But the difference being, because there are so many more games and so many more opportunities, I should say, for something to happen and for somebody to make a play, you see them more often, and frankly, you get bored of them. But to sort of cap this off, again, the world of Extremeson, I just think that when it comes to the NFL, single things such as one coaching decision, one play, factor in way more than I think they do in other sports. So what exactly makes football, and specifically the NFL, so entertaining? Why is it so fun to watch compared to other sports? And I think therein lies two ideas. It's complexity and the importance of not just its games, but every player, every coach. Now, why? Why does football feel more important than other sports? And I'm not talking about football as a whole. I'm talking about every game, every play, every drive. It feels like there's importance there compared to other sports, such as the MLB, such as the NBA, the MLS, and obviously the 4 big leagues of soccer in Europe. 5, I guess you could say. What makes the NFL different? And number one has to do with the amount of games being. In baseball, there are 162 games per team per season, and this is just the MLB. We're not counting leagues in other countries, and this comes out to 2,430 games a year. In the NBA, basketball, it's 1,230 games in the regular season, 82 per team. In soccer, in the MLS, 34 games per team per season, and if we count every league of soccer in the world, we're talking right around 20,000 to 25,000 professional games played every single year. Meanwhile, in football, the NFL, 17 games per season per team, 272 games in total per season. And with football being the only major professional league for the entire world to watch, really, and I know we have XFL and those other leagues, but they do not nearly get the viewership of the NFL and football. And maybe you could make that same argument for basketball and baseball, and especially soccer. I mean, considering the amount of leagues of soccer there is, that's not really a point. For baseball, there's literally 2,430 games in a season. And basketball, same thing, 1,230 games. So they are not even comparable when it comes to the amount of games being played, which, going back to what we mentioned earlier, importance, complexity. Because there are only 17 games in an NFL season for any one team, that means that all of those games are going to feel much more important than the 82 games that you're playing in basketball, than the 162 games you're playing in baseball. And although soccer has the closest comparison, it's still double the amount of games played in the NFL. And that's not even counting, in the European leagues, where they're playing not just for their league, but they're playing for cups, Champions League. They're playing for certain domestic cups that they have. Players are going to the World Cup. They have other commitments, where in the NFL, it's just those 17 games. Next, let's talk about the players. I think one of the biggest factors in why the NFL is so complex is because of the amount of players on the field. In the average NFL game, you have 11v11, but you have players focused on just one side of the ball. You have a player just focusing on defense, and not just defense. That player may be a cornerback, may be a linebacker, they may be a defensive lineman. And on the other side, you have wide receivers, you have running backs, and most importantly, the quarterback. Whereas in other sports, especially in the NBA, you're one position and you're doing both offense and defense. And you may be saying, well, doesn't that make it more complex? The fact that you have to focus on both offense and defense. And sure, you can make that argument, but the difference being, the reason you can focus on offense and defense is because you are playing against that same position. If you're a point guard, you're more likely to go against another point guard. And because you already know that position and you play that position every single day, it makes it a lot easier to try and defend against. Whereas in the NFL, the quarterback, he's going against the entire defense. He has to read cornerbacks, linebackers. He has to worry about linemen. He has to worry about his own team and being protected. And that's just not the case in other sports. And baseball is a whole other different beast. And I would even say baseball is a bit complex, but in a completely different way. And we'll get into that a bit later. But same with soccer. Even though soccer is 11v11, the constant movement, and again, the idea of facing that offense-defense, that's the best sort of comparison we have. But again, the difference being in soccer, you have one objective. As a defender, as a offender, if you're a striker, your main sort of objective is to score. And anybody else on offense, where that's just not the case in the NFL. It's way more complex than that. And again, I'm not saying that the other major sports aren't complex, but the NFL is just a completely different beast when it comes to that side of it. And I think that goes back to what I mentioned earlier when we come and talk about importance. Because everybody is so specialized in the NFL, whether it's player-wise, coach-wise, it makes it a lot more difficult to get things right. Finally, let's talk about the size of the playing field. In the NFL, if you look at the size of the playing field compared to all the other major sports, and considering that you are constantly worrying about every player on the field compared to other sports where that may not be the case, you can see in baseball, even though the field is considered large depending on where you are playing, there really is one thing you have to think about as a player in the outfield, a player at shortstop. And the constant start and stop of the MLB can all depend on the pitcher. If a pitcher throws a no-hitter, then the other players on the field really don't have to do anything. Where in the NFL, it's not that simple. You could say the same about the NBA, about the MLS, soccer. You can't really carry in the NFL. So If we go and we put all those factors together, one being the amount of games being played, number two, the amount of players on the field and their complexities, and number three, the field size. We add up all that together alongside what I mentioned earlier in the book, Talib's book, The Black Swan, we come to this conclusion. The NFL has way more opportunities for excitement because of the less amount of games being played, which makes those games much more important. Number two, the players and the coaches having to be so cohesive and almost cohesive in a perfect form for them to not just win a game, but to get to a championship. And number three, the size of the field and the amount of field you have to cover, and that field being a lot harder to penetrate than in any other sport, makes, to me, the NFL way more entertaining to watch. And to get into more details about that, let's talk about a few other outside factors that I didn't mention that are related to the three we've already talked about. Let's talk about the specific positions. In the NFL, again, there are so many positions, there are so many coaches, and because those positions are so specialized, that in turn produces that amount of coaches. There's a coach for every position in the NFL. And that is just not the case with other sports. And there are some comparisons, such as baseball, but not really anything like that in soccer or hockey or really any other sport. It's so specialized, these positions, and unlike other sports, once you play one position, it's really hard to transition to another. We have seen that, but definitely not to the degree we see in other sports. The longevity of these players and injuries play a big role in why the NFL is so difficult to win in. And let's add on top of that too, the NFL is way more difficult to win games in. There's way less room for error in the NFL compared to other sports such as baseball and basketball, where you're playing so many games that a loss doesn't hurt you as much as it would in the NFL. One loss in the NFL can mean the difference between you making the playoffs. It can mean the difference between you getting the number one pick. And it can mean the difference between you having one of the greatest teams to ever grace the football field or to be a good team forgotten by time. And I think the NFL, more than any of the other sports, are affected by these outside factors, as we mentioned earlier. One injury can completely derail an NFL season because a month out of action is a quarter of your season almost. That's 4 games. And that quarter of the season can mean an entire difference in the NFL compared to other sports where we have Nikola Jokic for the Nuggets out for a whole month. And not only could the Nuggets lose all those games and still make the playoffs, still make a championship run, but they're more likely not to. They can still win without their quarterback. Where in the NFL, that just isn't the case. Now, we've gotten into a lot of the on-the-field complexities of the NFL and football. We've talked about the amount of games being played. We've talked about the players. And we've talked about the field size and the idea that every drive, every game, every play matters a lot more because of the amount of opportunities being so much less than in other sports. You have NBA players going up and down the court having every opportunity to score in a given game. Same with the MLB. You know you're going to have a chance to go up to bat and make a difference. Whereas in the NFL, you could have the greatest game of your entire life and still lose by 40 points. And that's because of the factors we mentioned before with the amount of players being on the field and the assignments. But it's not just the on-the-field complexities that make the NFL so interesting, but it's also the off-the-field complexities. You see, off the field, we have owners, we have GMs, we have coaches, and we have recruitment. And they also have to be cohesive to be able to run a successful organization. We see NFL organizations that for years have been dysfunctional and haven't seemed to get it right. And that has to do, again, with the owner and the recruitment. One of the biggest reasons why bad teams stay bad in the NFL for so long is because of talent recruitment. It is so much harder to gauge talent in the NFL than in any other league. And I think, again, that has to do with the NFL, one, being the only professional league, and two, the talent pool you can dip in. In soccer, there's players all around the world that can be recruited. In baseball, all around the world, and you could even say the same for basketball. Same with hockey, with how big that is in other countries. In football, you really have just the colleges here in the United States, and that's pretty much it. And there are the rare occasions where you can find players in other countries, but what we got is what we got here in the U.S. And if you don't get it right, that can mean the difference between a Super Bowl run, a Super Bowl dynasty, or your franchise being set back for another 5 years. Sorry, Jets and Raiders fans. Now, I want you to imagine that you're playing a chess match. Now imagine you're playing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Imagine you're playing 20 chess matches all at once. That's what an NFL organization feels like. A team isn't just playing against another team. It's a GM versus another GM, an owner versus another owner, an owner versus a GM. And not only are you fighting the external battle, but you're fighting the internal battle in some cases, in which, again, those type of battles can set your franchise back or set you up for success. And going back to sort of the idea of the talent pool, one of the biggest reasons that it's so hard to gauge talent is because getting the positions right in the NFL matters so much more, especially at perhaps the most important position in any sport, and that's quarterback. Quarterbacks are a dime in a dozen, especially superstar ones. And in this league, it's really hard to win without one. It's been pretty rare to see any sort of team be able to have any sort of success, especially in the postseason, without a quarterback. And I think when it comes to being a successful organization, you have to win every chess match, or most of them. You know, you have the chess matches going on externally, internally, on the field, off the field. And for you to be able to reach the Super Bowl and win a championship, you're going to have to win most of those matches. So if we go and add all this together, that is the NFL. These giant chess games of complexity that are so much more intricate and fragile compared to other sports. And so to recap, the NFL lives in the world of extremism, where so many exciting and improbable things happen more often than in any other sport. The NFL games feel more important, and that's due to the intricacies and complexities of players, plays, coaching, ownership, and all the other off-the-field stuff we mentioned before. And in turn, that complexity makes it more interesting, especially if you want to dive deep into the sport. Now, whether it's technical jargon or pure statistical reasoning, there is one other reason why I love the NFL, and specifically why I love the Denver Broncos so much. And it has nothing to do with any of the things I talked about before, but more of a personal reason. Now, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I ask a lot of people why they like certain sports teams, and a lot of the time it's because, oh, the logo was cool. Oh, there's one player I really liked on that team, or I really like on that team. Like past tense, present tense, whatever. And it can be as simple as somebody even just liking the logo. I mean, my friend Parker, he's a huge Bengals fan. He grew up in Colorado. He's lived here his whole life. He loves the other Colorado teams, but for some reason, instead of the Broncos, he supports the Bengals. And it's all because as a kid, he liked, the logo. And if I'm getting that story wrong, sorry, Parker. But for me, it is a lot of those different things. Growing up in Denver, that's the most obvious reason for me to support the team. But one of the main reasons is because of my dad. Now, growing up, me and my parents, we really didn't share a lot of similarities, especially when it came to hobbies, music taste, certain things we liked. But if there's one thing that me and my dad shared, it was the NFL. You see, my parents grew up in a different time, and so I can't even blame them for not understanding or liking the same things as I do. They grew up in a different country, spoke a different language, and it's not really necessarily something I'm mad about or upset about. It's just how it is. But during that 2015-2016 season, I will never forget watching, it might have been all the games with my dad, the magical Denver Broncos defense from that season. It was magical, not just for me to watch, but to share that moment with my dad. And even now, my dad, I don't know how much of a fan he really is of football or the Broncos. He doesn't watch it as much as I do. He doesn't play fantasy. He doesn't do any of the extra stuff. But that season alone, I'll never forget sharing that moment with my dad, and specifically that overtime game against the Patriots in the regular season, seeing CJ Anderson run down the sideline. I remember our power went out and me and my dad had to watch the game in my little sister's room. And even to this day, I don't know whether he genuinely likes football and the team or whether he was just excited about it because I was. But either way, that's one of the reasons I love this team. Is it's one of the only things I feel like I shared with my dad when it came to interests. And just recently, too, we got to go see a game for the first time in real life against the Chargers. And it was just cool being able to hang out with them and enjoy something together. For me, that's such a rare thing, considering just, again, the differences in our personalities and our hobbies. But that, to me, is why the NFL is the most entertaining sport to watch. And again, I like other sports. I love soccer, love watching tennis. I love a lot of other different sports. And if there's any that you think can compare when it comes to the entertainment factor of the NFL, or maybe they just, to you, have reasons that I didn't mention here that make them better or more entertaining to watch, let me know. But thank you again for watching. Go Broncos, and love you, Dad.